everyone. Welcome to Download, where we bring you discussion and analysis from a Catholic perspective. Today's Monday, October 9th, 2023. I'm Brad Eli here with my two co-hosts, Christine Niles and Trey Brock. We at Church Militant have reported a lot on the suffering of Catholics in China. Well, a U.S. Congressman is now speaking out. Representative Mike Gallagher, a Catholic, of Wisconsin's 8th District, wrote an op-ed Thursday for the Washington Post calling on Pope Francis to be bold and fearless in his dealings with the Chinese Communist Party. Here to unpack the Congressman's thoughts and tell us more about persecution in China is the one, the only Dr. William Mahoney. Hello, Doctor.
Hi. Thanks for having me, Brad.
How's that op-ed actually strike you, William, with regard to its accuracy in portraying China?
I would say it's spot on. He talks about what all Karol Wojtyla and John Paul II had done to end communism in Poland, and that was really good, obviously. But now Francis, with China, you have the secret Vatican-China Accord, which was signed first, I think, in 2018, and then renewed 2 more times. It's current right now. And then there's all these missed opportunities he talks about, too. So, for example, when the Pope was in Mongolia, he didn't call out Xi Jinping as the dictator he is. Instead, he told Chinese Catholics to be good Catholics and good citizens. And then a little bit later, we learned that China had picked a bishop and on its own accord. So, and then that just kind of got rubber stamped by the Vatican after that. So it's a mess. He's really just, I think this congressman nailed it as far as the Pope.
Now, the one distinction you have, Dr. Mahoney, you actually had an interview with Cardinal Joseph Zen, the retired Bishop of Hong Kong, which was amazing because can you tell us about that interview and his take, Cardinal Zen's take, on the situation in China, between China and the Vatican?
The one thing he explained to us, which was really very sad to hear, was he said the Communist Party did have all these rules against religion, especially, and the Catholic Church as well, but they weren't enforcing them. They kind of looked the other way, and they just let the Church do its thing because at the time the Vatican was perceived as stronger under Benedict and prior to that as well. So once Pope Francis oversaw this Vatican-China Accord and other measures of, he released the excommunication on 7 official bishops there as well, and then later the Vatican even encouraged people of the underground church in China to join the official church, which is controlled by the Communist Party. What Cardinal Zen explained was that showed great weakness, and because of that they started cracking down on these laws they had on the books, and it just really, that's when persecution really just started to escalate against against Catholics there, and we know other religions that are also persecuted.
One last final question here. Did he use the phrase "sellout" with regard to the?
He did. He did. Cardinal Zen said what the Vatican has done with the underground church in China, those who are faithful to Rome and don't belong to the official church, the Communist Church, he said it is a complete sellout of the faithful Catholics there.
Well, thank you.
William, one thing I want to ask you is something you mentioned earlier. Gallagher, in his Washington Post article, he makes note of how Pope Francis told these faithful Catholics in China to be, as you said earlier, good Christians and good citizens. It seems to me that today, to be a good Christian oftentimes means to not be a good citizen. I wanted to ask if that's a decent analysis of that, and if that's so, that would almost that would mean the exact opposite of what Pope Francis has told these Catholics in China.
Yes. Well, what's really happening in China too, and if I'm aware of it and you're aware of it, then I'm sure the Pope is also aware of it, is that the Communist Party there is always talking about Sinicization. So they're saying to make the religions more like China, but it's really a misnomer because they're talking about the Communist Party. China is not traditionally a communist place, right? I mean, they had emperors and dynasties up until 1912. The Communist Party didn't actually come into power until October 1st, 1949, when Mao Zedong declared the People's Republic of China. So this is a very late development. So when Xi Jinping and the Communist Party is talking about Sinicization, they're really talking about making all these religions bow to communism, to bow to socialism, which really isn't bowing to Chinese culture, which is actually mostly Chinese culture is more Confucian and that history there. So what he's asking them to do by saying be good citizens under this current regime is to be better, is to give Xi Jinping what he wants and just to give him all the communist lip service that he wants to hear. I mean, that's really what he's asking of them, and that conflicts with being a good Catholic, as you say. So it's really puts them in a very strange dilemma.
I have a question. So obviously, this Vatican-China Accord has been really controversial. It's been heavily criticized, obviously by Cardinal Zen, but also by other high-ranking cardinals like Cardinal Gerhard Mueller, who was former prefect of the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith. He actually said this deal was like making a deal with Hitler. You can't trust the CCP. And I know that Cardinal Pietro Parolin, who has obviously he was kind of helped broker this deal and heavily pushed it. He's defended it by saying that, well, Pope Benedict approved the initial draft of it, that we had to do this because it was going to prevent an even worse schism in the church in China, because they were appointing these bishops without the church's approval. And he said that the accord only covers the nomination of bishops, does not in any way touch on other aspects of the life of the church in China. But is that true in practice?
I mean, the problem is that it's a secret accord, so we don't know if that's true. He can say anything he wants about what's actually contained in the document. I asked Cardinal Zen point blank, I said, what's in the document? He said, I have no idea. I mean, there's only 2 living cardinals in China right now, and he's one of them, and he has no idea what's in the document. So I don't know what's actually in it. I don't know if that's true. You have to take his word for it. It's a trust me statement. I will tell you that Cardinal Zen did tell us that he had reason to believe Pietro Parolin was not a man of God, and he referenced the fact that he had spoken badly about bishops who were against communism and stuff, and said that they were too rigid, or whatever dumb words they use. But and that's what he said. He said, I really don't believe he's a man of God. So
yeah, well, it just seems like here when he says this does not in any way touch on other aspects of the life of the church in China. Well, clearly it has in practice, regardless of what they meant to do on paper, because of the way that the Chinese government has cracked down on the underground church, and thinking that this Vatican-China Accord has really given them carte blanche to do that.
100%. I mean, that's it. It shows weakness, and the communists don't respect weakness, so they just step all over it.
So Bishop Archbishop Saranda, I think it was about 2015 or so, he said that China is best, best applies social doctrine of the church. That's kind of a stretch. Your take on a comment like that coming from an archbishop like Sarando?
It's scandalous. I mean, it's an absolutely scandalous thing to say. You think oppressing people and forcing them to replace the 10 Commandments with the sayings of Xi Jinping is a triumph, is some kind of triumph when you're supposed to be a representative of Jesus Christ to save souls. It's scandalous.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Dr. William Mahoney, for being with us today, and we appreciate your insights very much.
Thank you.
Well, that's the question then in my mind is, why is there such a deal? If we're trying to, be better Catholics out there, help the Catholics out there. The original intention supposedly was to help the underground Catholics by, help them in their suffering. And yet it seems like it's backfired and hurt them even more. And the question still remains why that would happen. There is a money trail, and for a lot of people out there, they would think that, that can't possibly be because, there can't be any politics in the church. Well, I'm sorry. There's been financial scandals and politics in the church since Judas Iscariot, the first of the 12 apostles. So we have a little bit of money trail for you to follow on that regard. In June 2020, a Church Militant special report came out. Michael Voris was heading that one. And it's titled Vatican-China Sellout. Now, that's the same phrase that Cardinal Zen was using there himself. One of the only 2 existing Chinese cardinals today, living cardinals. So experts are saying the Chinese Communist Party, now sit down for this one because this is quite a number, has been sending $2 billion, this is what's written on our website, $2 billion, somewhere around $2 billion, upwards of $2 billion, annually to the Holy See since 2013. It's like, wow, who's receiving that? Who approved that? Where's that money going? How's it influencing anybody? And there's two expert witnesses about that, this funneling of money from Beijing to Rome, two independent sources, completely independent of each other. One is Dr. Francesco Galletti, is the report. If you go on our site, you'll find his name smeared around on our report, different pages. Founder and CEO of Policy Sonar, it's a Rome-based public policy institute, and that analyzes exactly how political changes affect world economic markets. Now, he's tracked various fortunes through the zero hedge fund markets. He was the first in the course of his work to uncover billions of dollars moving from Beijing to Vatican. He wrote a book about it, Red Contagion, how Italy became China's Trojan horse in the West. The second source for the reporting on Church Militant's site is an exiled dissident, Guo Wengui, who has accused the Vatican of receiving $1.6 billion, so somewhere approaching $2 billion every year since 2014 in bribes from the Chinese Communist Party. He says Beijing has been paying the Vatican to, quote, on our site, quote, to shut up about China's religious policies. And noteworthy, even to this day, the Vatican has never denied the very public allegations. Now, is it true? We don't know. Is it false? We don't know. The allegations are out there. We do know that. And they're independent sources that are saying the same thing coming at it from different angles. We do know that. And we have reported that. What influence does that have on what particular individuals in the church? We don't know. But it does seem to be a bit of a smoking gun with regard to the whole mix of things.
Yeah, and also it's consistent with the CCP's overall strategy of, according to this dissident world domination. I mean, they use money, and it's not just the Vatican; it's countries all over the world. So, for instance, China and Australia, there's something like $200 billion moving from China to Australia, Italy as well, lots of other countries. This is how the CCP is trying to influence foreign relations to kind of, influence them to not speak so loudly out against the human rights violations taking place in China. It's money, and there's no reason to doubt that possibility among certain Vatican officials. If they're taking in that much money, $2 billion is a lot of money every single year, to kind of keep their mouth shut. And that, unfortunately, is what the Vatican has done. They have kept their mouth shut on the persecution and suffering of the underground church in China. I mean, to say, for Holy Father to say, be good citizens, that's a very loaded thing to say. It's not like U.S. citizens being good citizens. If you're a good citizen in communist China, that means you toe the party line. You don't get out of step with what the communists say. So, and even along that very line, they're influencing the religious services. So you'll have to sing hymns of the communist motherland during the services. They're rewriting the Bible over there. They're censoring young people that say if you're a minor, you can't be at religious services here. So there are many soft and hard persecutions going on over there that are very problematic with regard to the spread of the faith. Yeah. They want a one China, meaning one heart, one mind, one soul. And they see, just like all the communists have seen from Lenin, Stalin, all the way forward, they see the Catholic Church, which they don't believe in, as just this meddlesome body, the very powerful body that's very meddlesome, and actually tainting their people. And they want to neutralize that. If you just look at it from pure politics, they would have it's logical. We have reported on stories of the government literally razing churches, meaning R-A-Z-I, destroying Catholic churches, going in, literally taking down images of the Sacred Heart and replacing them with Xi Jinping.
Right.
I mean, how are you supposed to be a good citizen in that sense? How, as a Catholic?
Yeah, and these Chinese Catholics, because of how much persecution they're enduring, and they're still holding on to the faith. I mean, that's like the essence of Christianity right there. And they're living that out in a very real way. It makes me feel, I don't know, just so soft for complaint. I complain about like a bad Wi-Fi connection or gas prices that I'm not in favor of, but they're over here, and a lot of them, they are dying. They're being persecuted. They're not I imagine that it's hard for them to have access to, the Mass, or it's hard for them to have access to confession or things like that, things that we over here in the West, oftentimes not take advantage of, but we don't recognize that gift. We have the ability to drive 5 minutes away and have all of that at our fingertips, and they're being persecuted on a very wide level from the very top. And I don't know, it's a good example of they're living the faith out. They're being persecuted. They're holding on to their faith. They're pledging their full allegiance to Christ and His church, and they're being persecuted for it. But it's a good example of what Christianity is.
I would say too that it's a double-edged sword, for a double persecution for them, because since the 49, the church, the communists never just completely take religion away. They falsify it. They want to give you their version of the church. So there is a above-ground church over there that has all the Xi Jinping on the wall and singing hymns to the Communist Motherland Party, even though it hasn't been communist since until it turned red in like 1950. So it doesn't have a history of communism, of course. So the idea is that they don't want just the sacraments as an Orthodox group. They want to be in union with Rome, and this is the bottom line. And this, I think, is for all of us, and this is a takeaway for all the viewers out there, that for them, when Zen himself, Cardinal Zen, who loves the Catholic Church, loves the people of China, loves everything about Catholicism, and he would actually go so far as to use the word selling out. Okay, the Vatican sold out the people of China. Who does he mean by that? How does it apply? Blah, 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 who knows? But to use the phrase, and the people over there have tooth and nail died, gone to their grave, been tortured and everything else for the last 70 years for that one and only principle. We want to stay united with Rome. Now, viewers out there, we're having little scuffles about, the Synod, and is the Pope doing this, or is the Pope doing that, or whatever, or is the Cardinals, and all this type of stuff. And how easy is it for people to break with, I've had it, they didn't go far enough here, they went too far there, say this or whatever. My goodness, you can still go to a Catholic Mass over here, and thank God you still can. And those people over there, if anything, they're a testimony to, even if personnel in your particular age of the church don't serve you so well, aren't fulfilling their roles as they ought. But they have to answer to God for that, however that goes. But if they don't do that, and you still cling to your Catholic roots and don't give in and say, I'm scandalized, I'm leaving, I'm becoming an Orthodox, I'm becoming a Protestant, I'm becoming an atheist, I'm not going to church anymore. That wasn't their response. And it shouldn't be our response either.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Synod. So Cardinal Zen is in the news again because, one, we know he was one of the cardinals who joined the other cardinals in submitting the dubia to the Pope. But then he also submitted a letter on September 21st, his own letter to the members of the Synod, expressing some serious concerns about what's taking place. And I'm kind of seeing two strains here in the online commentary on the Synod. On the one hand, you've got the people who are actually freaking out and saying, this is going to completely change the church, and everybody's panicking and freaking out, and I've got to leave the church, I've got to go in schism. But then you have the other side that's saying, there's just nothing to worry about at all. People are taking things out of context, and there's just calm down, and there's just nothing to see. Well, no, the truth is somewhere in the middle. And we do know for a fact that there are cardinals in Rome with nefarious purposes. We know that for a fact. Some of them are taking part in this synod, and we know that some of them are wanting to implement very revolutionary ideas. That needs to be called out. People need to be warned about that sort of thing. That's exactly what Cardinal Zen was doing in this letter. And he brings out lots of different concerns, but there were three in particular that he was worried about. He said, one, he says, I'm told that synodality is a constitutive element of the church. But on the other hand, I'm told that this is what God expects from us for this century as a novelty. He's like, which is it? Is synodality a part of the church from the very beginning? Or is this a new thing? What is going on here? Then he says, even greater confusion and worry I feel when I see the suggestion being made that finally the day has come to overturn the pyramid, meaning the hierarchy is now subjected to the laity and that we should bring in democracy. which has never been a part of the church, ever. And then he says, worry is added for me when I note that while this synod was being convoked, there was already underway in Germany the so-called synodal path. So we have to remember, this is why people are worried. It's not like the synod is taking place in some vacuum. You have over in Germany a schism happening in real time. They're calling it a synodal path. They are blessing same-sex unions in a positive, like the way they're saying it's positive. And everybody's worried, are we heading in that direction? And why is it, quite frankly, that the Pope has never ordered the Germans to stop? He's never said, stop your synodal, never. What he did do is he had Cardinal Mark Ouellet say, halt it until our synod is done. Just place a halt. Did the German bishops listen? No, of course they didn't listen. But Pope Francis didn't step in and put a halt to it. And so and then also you have the worry about the laity now being able to vote. The laity are now able to be voting members of the synod. Cardinal Zend is worried about that. Cardinal Burke, Cardinal Mueller is worried about that, saying we are now confusing the role of the ordained versus the laity, and the laity don't have the right. If their votes are going to be included as part of the final conclusions of the synod, well, then it ends up being non-binding. It can't be part of canon law because laity can't participate in that. So,
yeah, when I was early in the 70s, I mean, I was just a little kid then, and going to catechism class, all the classes were orientated to the same thing. Turn the pyramid upside down. It's a round table now. It was basically, all the laity and everything else is equal on par with everybody else. And the thing is, Christ didn't institute the church that way. Of course you have to listen to people. Of course you don't want to be clerical. Of course you don't want to be condescending, all that. But Christ told, go out and Trey, you can weigh in on this, about everybody's participating in that spreading of the truth. But the magisterium itself, that actually confirms and ratifies doctrine and everything, for all the history of the church, has been that magisterium, which is the college of bishops, as Vatican II talks about, in union with the head of the college, which is the Pope. And that was his gift, really. That's his gift to us, to always have that doctrine that we can take out to the peripheries, that we have certified, that we know for a fact, and the bottom line is, if we're just all listening church, if all the bishops and cardinals all have to sit down and listen to us, then what's my value of going to church? What am I getting out of it? What do I really need to be there for if I'm calling the shots, if the tail's wagging the dog? Do I really need to worry about the dog anymore? It seems counterproductive.
Brad, you asked me to weigh in. I'm still trying to figure out what synodality means. That's where I'm focused on. I'm like, I don't know what this means.
You should go to college.
It's all we're talking about.
Well, Cardinal Zen doesn't even know, so you're in good company.
Yeah. With regard to your question, excuse me. It sparks a good conversation, but the distinction I make is very simple. You have the laity and then you have the clergy. Both have that baptismal call to holiness. Both have that obligation to go out and preach and evangelize and whatnot. The distinction is very simple. The distinct difference between the laity and the clergy is that the clergy can confect the sacraments. That's the distinction between the laity and the clergy. And so I get frustrated sometimes when everybody's talking about these changes, and kind of like you're talking about, worried about if something is new that's going to be implemented that's going to somehow change church teaching. I'm just sitting here and I'm like, we have access to everything. Everything's, for the most part, that I'm aware of, everything's been laid out. We've got dogma, we've got doctrine. I'm not sitting around and waiting for some new church teaching to come about so I can finally start living my faith out. It's all been laid out. I think that's the blessing of being in the 21st century. We've got everything. We've had all these councils, and us three are sitting here right now, and we're just like, okay, let's grab onto these, let's assent to them, let's believe in them first, and then let's start living them out. So this idea of, the hierarchy, having this huge role in changing or making all these new church, I don't really worry about that. I mean, if they want to do that, if you want to add on to what has already been laid out for us, go ahead, sure. That'll give us a deeper understanding. I think my point is this. I don't go to Mass. I don't go to church so I can just hear a great homily. If I hear a great homily, that's amazing. Or I don't go to church to be taught something. I mean, that's not really why I would go. I go to Mass for the worship, which is an end in and of itself. But it's also not an end in and of itself in the sense that when I'm going to Mass and I receive the Eucharist and I have that gift that these Chinese Catholics, I assume a lot of them don't have that gift. We should be grateful for that. That transforms me into Christ, and I'm supposed to then go out and live my faith out. And so I'm not reliant upon, some sort of great homily. I don't need that in order to live my faith out. What I do need to do is have that broken spirit and contrite heart when I'm at Mass, and have that gratitude for the gift of the Mass, for the gift of the Eucharist, and then I can go out and live it out. So I think we get caught up sometimes just going back and forth about all these things. It's very simple to me. There's a distinction there, and you know it. You know what the distinction is. And then you just, you've got the church teachings, laity, hold on to those church teachings, and then just start building, start evangelizing, start catechizing, start creating. That's what we're supposed to do. And we don't need to wait on people to tell us to go do it. We have that commission given to us by our Lord.
I think you're in the minority of Catholics who is very well grounded in the faith, and so you can have that very strong, good perspective about things. I think the concern here, especially for people like Cardinal Zen, is that most Catholics are not that well grounded in the faith, and he's very worried that some of these cardinals and bishops are going to go and manipulate the teachings of the church in order to impose that agenda upon this unsuspecting flock and lead so many souls astray. And he called out, we were talking about how he called out Cardinal Parolin, Secretary of State, over the China-Vatican Accord. He actually blasts him in this letter to the bishops. He actually said the Synod Secretariat is very efficient at the art of manipulation. That's pretty, manipulation. Then he says, I see clearly the whole plan of manipulation. And he says specifically here, they begin by saying we must listen to all, especially those who are excluded, those who are on the margins. And that really translates into people of a different sexuality. That's what it comes down to. And
to those bishops that Cardinal Zen is rightly, calling out, I think the point is that those guys, a lot of those people, especially the bishops here in America, they're not going to. You can tell them to start teaching what the church actually teaches all you want. I don't assume that a Tobin or a McElroy is just going to turn around and start preaching the truth anytime soon. And I think that's the point. You don't make it out to people as if you need them to do that. You don't need them to do that. And if you do, well, then we're kind of screwed. What the message should be to Catholics everywhere, this is what I try and tell the kids that I teach all the time. It's like, no, you've got, look up the catechism. You've got a Bible at home. Go read that thing. Look up good talks on the internet or whatever it is. And assent to truth, and the truth is there. But if you make it out to people as if you need these people, these bishops, to be preaching and teaching all these great things, well, then it lulls them into this false mindset that I need them to do that, and if they don't, well, then I'm screwed. I can't move forward, which sort of sticks you in it puts you in a situation where you can't move forward. And
Archbishop Sheen said it's the laity. It's up to the laity to save the church. We can't sit on waiting for the clergy to do it. We've got to do it.
And that's not even their role today. It's you don't need them to do that. That's the significance of everything being laid out for us. You have all these church teachings for 2,000 years. They're right there for you. Go grab onto them. That's the point.
So learn your faith, and if you are tempted to become indignant, think about the Chinese people who are really being persecuted with the double-edged sword these days. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode of The Download. Now please join us as we finish in prayer, begging Our Lady's intercession for our nation and our church. In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Salve Regina, Mater Misericordiae, vita dulcedo et spes nostra salve. A te clamamus exules filii Eve, a te suspiramus gementes et flentes, in hac lacrimarum vale. Ea ergo advocata nostra, illos tuos misericordes oculos, ad nos converte, et Iesum benedictum fructum ventris tui, nobis post hoc exilium ostende, o clemens, o pia, o dulcis Virgo Maria. Amen. In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you again for joining us for The Download. We premiere a new episode like this every weekday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. From all of us here at Church Militant, God bless you.